Hi, my name is David Sheep. I want to talk about Dark World in the context of both Advanced and Genesys. So I want to get ahead of what you're about to see and just say this is not a deck profile. I don't have a complete 40 cards here. This is close to what I played at Locals a couple weeks ago. I just haven't gotten around to making this. I did okay. I'm not happy with how I played. There were a couple moments where I failed the deck, and there were a lot of moments where the deck failed Yu-Gi-Oh! And I'm not super happy with where it sits as a advanced deck or a Genesys deck, and I think there are ways that Konami can help the deck out by future support and also repointing things in Genesys. I'm going to get right into the conversation I want to have. And we're going to start with the Advanced because there is a identity that Dark World has had throughout its entire game plan. It started off as, right when it came out, was Grapha and Traps control, and then historical analysis showed that was terrible, just play combo. And then from there, we never stopped playing dig through your deck combo crap because Dark World really struggles to do much of anything else effectively or efficiently. That's the big thing, is it can do other things. It can kind of build boards, but why wouldn't you just play literally anything else that does that? You've actually got really good consistency pieces in with Snow, Rainbow as a discard fodder, and Dark Corridor. These are really good consistency pieces. I'm not unhappy to play these. These are fine, especially if I play it with Rainbow. I only played 2 at Locals. I'm not really sure why I made that decision, to be honest. I was really upset about it about halfway through the event. I was really starting to feel the lack of this card in my hand because Genta and Rainbow is just so good. Plus, Rainbow and really any discard outlet tends to be fine. We play 1 Grapha in Advanced and in Genesys. There's no reason to play a second in Advanced because it doesn't do anything, and you need all of your cards to either replace themselves or to do something, and Grapha, especially going first, does nothing. And in Genesys, it's 5 points. Why is this 5 points? If you want to put points on Dark World in Genesys, be my guest. I kind of get why you don't want to allow any deck to have access to an engine that really efficiently just digs and digs and digs and digs and digs. It really puts a hamper on the deep draw combo that could benefit actual strategies. That's the problem. Dark World isn't a strategy, especially without Silva. But we also play Ceruli for proccing your own extra effects. That's fine. And especially in Genesys with no Silva, it actually becomes quite a useful combo piece that you can do something with. And in Advanced, you only ever need 1. Playing 2 is in Genesys, but I wouldn't. Parl, I actually did like having in Advanced. I feel like with the other stuff that you wind up playing, you get to turn 3 often enough that this can come up. Wasn't super happy to see it most often, but it did make enough plays that I wasn't upset about it. We played 2 of the fusion spell. In Advanced, you can search this easily enough. You don't need 3. In Genesys, I do play 3. 1 Dark World Archives is bad. I'm never playing this card again in my life unless you give me a really, really good reason to. It's also 5 points in Genesys. This is frustrating because it is a conditional draw. Was it discard 1, draw 2? You have to discard a Dark World monster, and it's already a card you're losing in your hand. This is not a 6th as good as Pot of Greed. There is no reason this needs to be 5 points. I would even consider not playing it in Genesys if it was 0 points. Gates of Dark World. Obviously, you're playing 3 in Advance because it's free. It's not in Genesys. It's another 5 points. I get it. This being 5 points in Genesys is fine. If that gets left there for the rest of time, I will never say another word about this. However, this is a nickel and dime you to death pointed strategy. This isn't like K9 where you can't play a single card without shooting yourself in the foot. You can get away with playing just 2 in Genesys and not being too upset about it. I have fiddled with it enough to be, yeah, sure, whatever. I'm okay with that. Now, in Advanced, I think the best way to play Dark World, even with Droll at 2, because Droll is the main reason I'm doing this, is playing a K9 package. 3 Noroi, 3 Izuna, there we go, one Jokel, one Lantern. This was even what I was playing before the ban list. That's how long ago this locals was. I was playing, again, one Case, one Lupus, and one Force Release. Sorry for the order. This is purely to protect from hand traps. This is to protect from Droll. This is to protect from Nibiru. And it does a really, really good job of that. And if you check for those things, you can just go right into a Saryuja. And that digs you further into make Dark World plays so that you can more efficiently and effectively pull off a hand loop. That is, I feel like, a very, very sound chunk of this deck. And also, the games where I was winning the most often, I played no Dark World cards, and these were the only cards I saw next to hand traps. Dark World needs a new identity. It can't just be Deep Draw, and I think Konami has pretty effectively said they don't want Deep Draw to be a mainstay in the game. They've given no support to that over the last several years in Advanced, and in Genesys, it is pointed to a position where it can never be effectively meshed with anything that's going to effectively make use of it. That's fine. That is a healthy decision to make. Obviously, K9 is not an option in Genesys. We will get to what you do instead in a little bit. But this is... I like K9. I like how K9 is structured in Advance. Honestly, if your opponent is able to stop you from doing the hand loop, or if you just can't pull it off, and you wind up doing just a, like, big bodies with Dark World and K9 control, I had actually a decent amount of fun playing that. I feel like it needs a bit of a breadth of options, and I'll get into why I think I failed myself in the deck building to prevent myself from having that in a moment. Because there is another part of this deck, and it is Fiendsmith. It is a small Fiendsmith engine. I do not want to play the level 4. I don't need another normal summon, and it doesn't do anything to advance the game state. All I am doing is looking for a effective bodies on the board engine and a discard outlet. And in some weird scenarios, sometimes you actually use that fusion summon effect. That actually did come up. It's come up in testing, and it came up once at my locals. This is a really solid package. I think I over-invested into it in the extra deck, and we'll show that right now. Your extra deck is going to be the one Grapha. You can revive it off of the Parl, and I actually have. It is not necessary to play a second one. I feel like if your opponent can crack through that board, you're probably going to be winning off of the backbone of recurring your K9 engine, not through making more Dark World plays. It's possible. That's, I think, maybe up to more testing. I didn't do a ton of it, to be frank. I was making a lot of basic deck building errors that more testing would have maybe shown me the error of my ways. Werewolf, Ripper, Jax came up. I wasn't a huge fan of it, but I think it's fine enough. This is the extent of my K9 package. And the Saryuja is technically part of that package. This is fine. I think I needed more rank 5s. The rest of my extra deck is Fiendsmith stuff. For such a small portion of this deck, I really overinvested in this Fiendsmith stuff and didn't invest enough in the rank 5 plays. I always had the opportunity to make more or needed a rank 5 that I chose to cut, like Chronomaly or, I don't know, Conquery? I don't know. I'm not trying to FTK, except, I am. But not that way. The rest of it was, like I said, Fiendsmith stuff, so all 3 links, the Lacrima, Desiree, Necroquip. We have the Wave High King Caesar, really easy to make in Advanced, and definitely able to be made in Genesys. This is probably worth the point investment. Typhon was kind of separate, and so was Chaos Angel. Neither of these came up day of. Actually, sorry, Typhon did. But Chaos Angel didn't come up. I just wasn't sure what else to throw in. And you might be thinking, where is Dugares? Honestly, in testing, Dugares does not come up. I kind of get why it's 10 points in Genesys, but in Advanced, I'm never ending up with 2 level 4s on the board. And maybe that's a deck building discrepancy. Maybe I needed a stronger level 4 engine, but I didn't really have a desire for one. Like the deck was working just fine on its own. That's the extent of it. I was also, because this isn't the full 40 cards, I was also playing like Perulia and maybe Ash in the main. I don't think it was a flat 40. The deck is still deep draw, do a hand loop. And not a lot of people find that fun. It's kind of fun to play solitaire at locals if you want to turn your brain off for a little bit. And if you want to turn your brain back on, suddenly you're playing K9. I did actually like that quality of it is, oh, you stopped me from doing my thing. Okay, now I've got to think. Let's figure this game state out. And K9 does a good job of engaging with that type of gameplay, especially when you're not doing build-a-board stuff, when you're trading for value, when you're trying to engage with the bodies on board. There were a lot of times where I just had realized, oh, all of my canines are 2,000 bodies. If I just summon a couple of them and don't overinvest, you've got to really choose, like, is your disruption here good enough before I move to battle phase? Sometimes they didn't realize how much deck points you have on the field. Or if they do, they realize there's nothing they can do if I'm not overinvesting into something like a nib, into a droll, into a whatever. And that holds true into Genesys. Even once you get rid of the canine stuff, you've got a lot of big bodies on the board. You've got a lot of potential to disrupt an established board. And there are decent options for like rank 8s, rank 4s, rank 6s even, and fusion monsters. But there's nothing really to do with them in Genesys. So if I go in, I was also playing out of the sideboard Eradicator Epidemic Virus in Advanced. It's bad. It's also not pointed in Genesys. For a reason, it's bad. All decks that have been good for like the last year have a really efficient balance of I don't need all of my monsters and I don't need all of my spells to play, but if you cut me flat off of any one of them, I don't really care because I'm floating between them very effectively. Dracotail is really, really good at that. It doesn't need its spells to play. If it draws, an adequate series of monsters, it can push and then establish the spell traps after it's dealt with that. So in Genesys, I was still playing same engine. I think I discussed that Rainbow is very important. You want 3 of the spell traps. None of this costs any points here except for the Sylvan. We'll take that out. But suddenly now you're down to 2 gates. You're taking out the Accession. You're probably going up to 3 Dark Corridor because it's unpointed and it is a good card that starts plays. But if you aren't playing 1 Snow, then Dark Corridor doesn't actually do anything. And this is 33 points. That is frustrating because of how many cards are already pointed to such a high degree. And you could say, Liam, well, you can just cut the Snow and draw into the other stuff, because maybe if you cut the Snow now, you've got room for more gates. Well, searching a card is always better than drawing one more. You're gambling. And Dark World has been gambling since Dangers came out. Even before then, but especially since Dangers came out, people are still trying to force Dark World Danger to be a deck, and it just can't anymore. Dark World Danger doesn't work because you're gambling. Gambling hasn't worked since tier format, and we realized, oh, we don't need to gamble. We can just send so many cards to the graveyard that we're going to see everything. You can't do that in a deep draw deck. That is healthy for the game, and that will continue to exist. It won't. There's too many disruptions. There's still Droll in the format. There's still D-Shifter and Dimensional Fissure. You can't keep a deck that does this too much for a game to still be fun. And a deck that does this is not going to do it well enough to be fun to play. Okay. I don't remember what I was saying before I left, so I'm going to just jump into talking about Genesys and how that version of Dark World gets instructed. So because you're playing more copies of Dark Corridor, you need to go through the Snow. You need more advantage generation, and you need more things to do. Obviously, you can't play the Fiendsmith Link monsters, and you can't really... You're not playing those like extra deck rank 5s. You're not playing Chaos Angel. Not playing Typhon. So that's a lot of room in the extra deck that we have to work with. In Genesys, you need a normal summon that does something beneficial. The best one that I can find is Tour Guide. I have compared Tour Guide to a lot of the engines available. At least out of the ones that are commonly used, this is the better of the easily found ones, I guess is the best way to put it. Tour Guide ultimately represents a draw and a search. Quick effect, suck up through the Armored XYZ cards. Just bodies to use in case you diverge from that plan. I think there's also a lot of unexplored potential in some of the options available. I don't know if I'm using this to its fullest extent. But with this, you summon out a Fiendish Rhino Warrior. Just kind of do like a bare bones version of the combo. Oh, this also being points. I guess it makes sense, but I don't really think it needs to be. I feel like there are other cards that do more for no points. But maybe it's because of what I'm about to show you that they feel like, maybe this needs to be just a couple. I don't feel like it's unfairly pointed necessarily, but I don't think it needs to be. Anyway, you go into the XYZ for, this. Detach, do draw one? Yeah, draw a card, just free advantage, that's fine. With Fiendish Rhino Warrior, you dump the Buio the Dawn's Light, search out Mutiny in the Sky, so you've got, one card, Mutiny in the Sky. Mutiny in the Sky is live for any of your potential options. You can then rank up into the Armor Fortress, detach that, go for the trap card. You've now thinned your deck for 3 cards, and then you can go into Dark Knight Lancer on your opponent's turn. I think that is pretty darn good. This also leads to more plays for the future. The thing is, I don't think that the fusion options available are all that good. At the very least, they're not like divergent into like an end board piece. Excuse me. You can go for Luce, which I think I accidentally put back into a binder. My bad. But Luce represents a send from deck to grave, either if you've used Ceruli or if you are going second. And that's fine, but I don't know if you're going to get there. And also, what you would send isn't doing you a whole lot, and you don't need to go through the extra work if you just play something like Aerial Eater. I think Aerial Eater is really good because it's just on summon, send a Fiend. And most of what you're doing is Fiend-related stuff. I don't think there's a lot that does what this does. Genin-Ken certainly does not do this. Maybe it sets up a extra triggered effect of your Dark World cards, and especially with the points added to them, it's really difficult to justify using them to set up endboard pieces when using them doesn't grant you any late game benefits the way that other decks do. With Dark World, the way that the deck currently exists, it's still use it and then lose it. The only reason you can really stay in the game at all is because the Fiendsmith cards and the Mutiny in the Sky. Honestly, Mutiny in the Sky is incredible. I love this little package so much. It is really fun to pull off. It's really fun to play with. I think this was a brilliant stroke of card design by Konami. I really appreciate these. You can usually, with your gut, say, this belongs in the deck somewhere. Mutiny belongs in the deck somewhere, and I think Buio does too. Being able to cycle through these is what makes the game have any longevity. If you stay in the game in Genesys with Dark World, it's because you're cycling through these guys. And at that point, maybe there's just a better capital F Fiend deck available somewhere. And maybe Dark World doesn't really have a place in it. Maybe it does. I mean, Gates of the Dark World is crazy. Being able to establish a free level 4 on the body for the act of digging through your deck, that's really good. Maybe Grapha doesn't have a place in that deck. But if that's the case, why is it pointed? Why is base Grapha a card that has not been relevant in how many years now? Been pointed. And even in the FTK versions of the deck, it's not because it wasn't the second or third Grapha that was killing you. Maybe you really wanted to DD Crow the first one. The deck was playing two. And Grapha wasn't the problem card there. It really wasn't. You might argue that Snow is too good of a resource piece, being able to search anything as long as it's discarded. But to be frank, the only thing that it has the ability to search that Dark Corridor doesn't is the fusion spell. And you can just play 3 of those and pretty reliably see it. I feel like if you swapped up, like if you're really afraid of deep draw, but you want to facilitate Dark World finding a new identity. I think the way to do it is to push gates up to 7 points, which is just 4 here, because I don't think you're going to, as long as gates is pointed at anything 5 or higher, you're only going to play 2 of it. You don't want to put 15 points into something that you could just put 10 into instead. But if you put this up to 7 points, that's 14. That's a little bit less than what I would have spent on 3. And honestly, I did consider playing 3, especially in a world where I'm not playing snow. You could then cut snow down to something like, honestly, even if it's just 10, then that means between here you've got 24 points, which is still less than 1 snow, and no other deck is really ever going to consider playing this. They're not. And that means that you could even then justify playing, if this is 10, playing like 2 snow, and then you are off to the races with a lot of, because now you've got rank 4 options again. And in Genesys, rank 4 options make a huge difference. You'll notice in Advanced, I wasn't playing any rank 4s. Maybe I could have played like Exciton Knight to get into the Fiendsmith stuff, but I'm gonna see the Fiendsmith stuff. I'm not worried about seeing the Fiendsmith stuff. I don't need the rank 4s. And you're not playing Exciton Knight to board clear anymore. It's a bridge. And that sucks. It really sucks. I mean, I think in Advanced, it does see some play as a board breaker in some niche situations based on like the best players. But like the average player isn't using Exciton Knight because it's that good at board clearing. It's an ancillary thing. Rank 4 options in Genesys, though, can have a lot of impact. Exciton Knight is unpointed, and Exciton Knight would have a tertiary effect as a light fiend for the Fiendsmith cards that you're already playing. I really think Snow is not a problem card, and that would enable a version of Dark World that doesn't enable deep draw into unfun things, I think. Because the thing that Konami has telegraphed that they're afraid of are these guys. A boss monster being 5 points, I'm not going to begrudge them that. I think it's just so that nobody plays, like, King of the Swamp. But who cares? I'm not going to bellyache about that. Tour Guide makes sense as a 3 of because it is completely generic for this entire package. This entire package being 9 points, totally fair. I'm fine with that. It is a really fun, really effective package, especially in the right hand. I think there's a lot of stuff to be done with Tour Guide. It's played in enough decks. That's fine at 3 points. I really want to implore Konami to reconsider both the identity of Dark World as a deep draw deck, and it needs something that's repeatable and impactful. It really doesn't have that in the game right now. It's either hand looping or building a board. Even in Genesys, what you want to do is build a board or hope that you can play through one, but you're not playing a lot of non-engine. So you've got to make the engine work, and because it's a draw and then discard deck, a third or more of your hand is just going to be completely dead. It needs a new identity. It needs new members of the family, and that's going to be hard to do because you only have so many colors, but I think there is a lot of room for, and this is where I want to get to, cards like, and we'll kind of move on here, to some of the other stuff that I've considered but hasn't quite made the cut either due to lack of synergy or lack of something to use it for. Some of that's going to be skill issue. Some of that's going to be, I don't really think we're quite there with Dark World anymore. Diabolica the Draco General. This is a very good card. I don't have the conceptualization yet of the rank 8 spam version of the deck that would use this. You don't get enough rank 8s that reliably get on the board to really have a major impact on the game. I know there are good rank 8s in Genesys. There are. I have not put the work into finding the way to use them that actually wins games, to be frank. That is a little bit on me, but I think also if you can fit a card that has a similar identity to this in Dark World, you are going to have a very fun and certainly I don't think overpowered piece of the game, and it's still just going to be a one-off. I think any future support for Dark World is going to be hard-pressed to be a 3 of. Because we have all the consistency we need already, we need things that actually push the game. Push against a board or draw us, not literally draw cards, but like pull us out of the graveyard and back onto the field. Maybe not through summoning like just bodies randomly and abjectly to toss into a random rain gate, but things that form a modern version of the identity of putting cards from the field back to our hand so that we can keep running. We don't need to run to the deck. We can maybe run back into the graveyard. We can maybe modify the cards on the field into tuners. There is a massive depth of synchro options that we just can't efficiently put into the deck because it just loses us more cards in our hand, and we're already, ironically, at a lack of effective cards in hand. We're deep drawing into more and more bricks. We don't have something that actually wins the game except for Grapha. It's hard, at least in archetype. It would be very nice not to have to go into something like Wave King Caesar in order to win the game. It would be really nice not to have to do that. I mean, Dragon's Gate and Goblin's Crazy Beast are rank 6 options available, and I really heavily consider this just something to keep in mind. I think that you have rank 6 options that Fiendsmith enables that are really cool. Giant Trainer, I believe, was in the deck in Genesys and never got summoned. You just don't end up with enough rank 8s on the field just randomly to just, for funsies, go into a Giant Trainer. And going into a Giant Trainer isn't a game plan anymore. You can't just draw cards and hope you get there and reliably win any game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And really, realistically, you haven't been able to since Toss format. Giant Trainer is a neat option the deck can have if it ever finds itself with an abundance of level 8s. But unless you're gambling on dangers, you're not going to have that. And I don't want the deck to just be gamble and go. That's not fun for anybody, because either it means it's going to build the board that wins the game, or it's just going to fall flat again and again and again. Third Rainbow, because I don't know how to build a deck well. Dark Fusion and Evil Healer Dust to Gold. Okay, so this is an option that I haven't fully explored, I don't think, but I have really tried to make this work. It is close, but it's just not there. The fusion options that you have available are really close, but there's not enough of them to justify going this deep into fusion summons, and it still doesn't even use the graveyard, if memory serves. Yeah, it's hand or field, and you're not even discarding. And the fusion monsters that you're going into don't generate enough advantage to justify spending so much of your hand and so much of your effort when you could be doing other things with your Fiendsmith engine. I do want to continue to explore a Fabled version of the deck. You'll notice I haven't said at all that I'm playing Fabled Raven. In Genesys, I was not. There is a depth of synchro options available to the Fabled package that I think is just a little bit too unreliable to fully utilize yet. There is, I think, a bridge piece, a future piece of support that has not been made or found that will make this work. It is a thin package, I think, of a lot of one-ofs that would make this work, but in testing, this is so close to being a really, really fluid package in the deck, which is why I think that like a Dark World tuner would really push the options available in a really interesting way, and especially if you lock it into like only being able to summon Fiend Synchro monsters, only being able to summon Fiend monsters while it's on the field. That way you're not locked for the rest of the turn. There are ways you can make that so it's not completely generic, but I think even if it was, this deck is never really going to feel like like a kitchen sink deck, if you will. This, I think, would have a significant identity as the Dark World Fabled deck. That would be really, really cool to see, because it's going to cruise through a lot of the cards in your hand, deck, field, and graveyard in a way that's very... The best word to describe the current version is it flows so close to perfectly. What it misses And this has got no points. So you're really free to try this in Genesys. You are really free to make anything that is generic. And there are a lot of really good generic pieces in Genesys that this deck is so close to being able to effectively utilize. The problem being is that it still doesn't change the fundamental problem of Dark World, which is needing to draw the right combination of cards that play the game. You need to draw cards that want to be discarded, and you need to draw cards that want to discard. And that's fine. Some decks are allowed to exist like that. All of the Fabled cards each require a niche setup that is hard to work yourself into without creating choke points that any opponent that, if this deck got popular, would be able to identify. Like, oh, they just put Behemoth in the graveyard, so now they're going to go do a weird synchro play. Let's DD Crow that. This does create choke points that don't exist otherwise, because the deck as it currently exists can just keep drawing, and the more of these cards you draw, the less you can dig through your deck, because these want to make non-linear, non-deterministic plays. And that's really unreliable in a way that does not function super well in 2026. But the options available to you, if you can get there, the synchro options are really cool. Groza is a really cool piece that has not seen the light of day in a way that's really, I think, been satisfying to the people who know that this card is actually good. This card is good. But you just can't quite reliably summon it enough to justify the extra deck slot. It's just so close. And one of the big reasons it's so close is there is a level 3 light fiend fabled monster. It's a tuner, and tour guide can't let what it summons from deck be used as synchro material. You're still just doing the XE play. I think there's a Reborn. We start talking about 3 and 4 card combos, and when was the last time any of those were involved in a deck that mattered for what are ostensibly meant to be linear plays? Like, this deck does eventually, once you realize what you're doing, become very linear. For a deep draw deck, a linear deep draw deck, you're going to get a lot of people yawning if all that happens for this deck in the future is that it gets more of the same. People are going to yawn, and no one's going to really sink their teeth into the breadth of options available. This is a fun deck. This is a fun deck that just fundamentally is missing pieces. It's going to be a lot more fun in Advanced because you have ways to protect your plays and to pivot to doing something that's not Dark World. In Genesys, I think they need to loosen the reins just a little bit. And in Advanced, I really think they need to ban Silva and put the pedal to the metal. Give us something else to do. Please, we're begging for it. There's not a whole lot of new Dark World deck profiles out there that you'll see because there's nothing new to do with it. You can spam bodies, so can Materia Reactor. I hope that what comes across is not anger. There is frustration embedded in the passage of time. Anything that doesn't change is going to die, or the minimum start to struggle. Dark World has not changed in half a decade. I hope that anyone who watches this can really see that there are things to explore that I haven't gotten to yet, and that anyone from the Konami Genesys team really takes a look and finds a way to not justify to me. I don't need an explanation. I kind of can see why Dark World is where it is. You want searchers pointed high in case they're really easy to get to so that not every deck or not every turn looks the same. And you want deep draw to not facilitate unfun strategies. Dark World is not doing anything in Genesys that I think you're going to have a problem with. I think soon you're going to want to let it breathe a little bit so that we can start pushing the boundaries of what Genesys is already and hasn't had the opportunity to explore. I don't think Dark World as a deck is going to upset a lot of people, especially if we're able to incorporate really fun stuff like the Fabled package. And I'm missing a couple cards. There's Stairway. There's like a continuous spell that's really good. There's the level 3 Fabled Fiend Tuner that I probably would still play even though I can't Synchro Summon with it. It is a cool option that came up in testing. Give us more... Give us more rank 6s. Give us more Fiend options that like push a new style of gameplay. Give us more cool Fiend fusions. Give us more Fabled. Take a look at what Dark World might do in a world of Genesys where, key point, where Mirage of Nightmare is back to 10 or more points. Because here's the thing. Mirage of Nightmare is not great in this deck because you're not putting yourself in a position in turn 3 where you're really doing much with what it gives you. But the second Dark World gets a little bit too good, Mirage of Nightmare gets way too good. I really want people to think about this deck. I think there's something really cool in Dark World with how much Dark support, Fiend support, deep draw, things that can be done in a fair version of this deck. Because it's not even like super deep draw. It's not like I'm playing Graceful Charity, Pot of Greed, and it's not like I'm going to be playing the new Yugi support that's like a Graceful Charity on legs that locks you into something that doesn't facilitate here. So it's going to be fine. I'm not worried about that. I'm not even looking at that. But there is something here. There's something to be found that is more than just what I've made. And I really think that Genesys players deserve to see something like that. It is not on the level of Radiant Typhoon or VS or any of that. But it is really something that I think could have a lot of fun at locals, because Genesys locals is where people are going to take not just the Fire Kings, all that. People are going to take their Blackwing deck. People are going to have fun with whatever. Let them try. And if it's too much, pull it back. It's not like we're not getting frequent updates. The frequency of updates has been fantastic. I've been so excited with every points update that has come out, because everything's been super interesting, at least to me. And a lot of it is just like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But the fact that we're getting these as frequently as we are with the quality of changes made, I'm really happy. I'm really happy with Genesys. I'm really happy to try and explore stuff like that. There is a lot of room for creativity here and the kind of fun I think Genesys really wants. Thank you for watching. Thank you for spending time on this. I really appreciate anyone who sat through this far. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. What? You want to say hello? You want to say hello? Come here, Papa Dog. Come here, Papa. Hello. Yeah, you want to see all that stuff on the desk? Mm-hmm.